The wooden doors of the county courthouse creaked open, and a hush fell over the room as Elijah Turner stepped inside. He was a tall, broad-shouldered black farmer with hands weathered from years in the fields, his sun-browned skin lined with the marks of labor and time. His boots carried the dust of his land, the very soil that had brought him here today. Tucked under his arm was a battered leather folder, edges frayed, its contents pressed close to his chest as if it held his family's very soul. He didn't walk quickly or bow his head. Instead, he moved with the steady dignity of a man who knew the worth of what he carried. From the benches, whispers rippled. Townsfolk leaned toward one another, their voices low but sharp enough to reach his ears. What's he doing here? Thinks he can fight this case? Poor man doesn't stand a chance. Elijah ignored them. His gaze was fixed ahead, on the bench where the judge would soon preside. He found a seat at the plaintiff's table, set his hat gently down, and laid the folder carefully in front of him. His fingers lingered on its cover for a moment, as though grounding himself in its presence. Across the aisle, the opposing lawyer, a slick man in a gray suit, smirked at him, shuffling a stack of crisp papers with exaggerated confidence. Behind him, a few townspeople chuckled quietly, as if the trial were already a foregone conclusion. But Elijah sat tall, shoulders square. He had come not for pity, nor for theatrics. He had come for justice. The clerk's voice rang out, announcing the start of proceedings. As the judge entered, robes swishing, Elijah tightened his grip on the folder. He knew the road ahead would be steep, and the laughter would sting. But inside that worn leather case was something no jeer, no smirk, no prejudice could erase. The truth. The judge settled into his high-backed chair, adjusting his spectacles as he scanned the docket. His eyes landed on Elijah's name, and a faint smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. Case number 1472, Turner versus Halloway, the clerk announced. The opposing lawyer, Mr. Halloway, rose smoothly from his seat. His suit was pressed to perfection, his shoes gleaming under the courtroom lights. He carried himself with the swagger of a man who thought the outcome was already written. Your Honor, he began, his voice dripping with false courtesy, we're here today to clear up what can only be described as a misunderstanding. Mr. Turner insists this land is his. A fine story, no doubt, but nothing more than a tale passed down to comfort him in his unfortunate circumstances. A ripple of chuckles rose from the gallery. Several townsfolk leaned forward, amused. Elijah didn't flinch. His hands rested firmly on the leather folder, his expression unreadable. The judge leaned back, folding his hands across his stomach. Mr. Turner, he said, his tone dry, I hope you've brought something more than folklore. These claims of land ownership from families like yours rarely hold up. Let's not waste the court's time with fantasies. The words stung like a lash, and the courtroom erupted in quiet laughter. A young man in the back whispered loudly enough for all to hear, Does he even know how to read a deed? More laughter followed. Halloway grinned, emboldened. He turned slightly toward Elijah and spoke with mock sympathy. Now, Mr. Turner, don't take it too hard. Lots of people convince themselves they own land they never did. These cases can be confusing for those without proper education. The crowd snickered again, their eyes fixed on Elijah as if waiting for him to crumble. But Elijah didn't move, his jaw set, his dark eyes steady. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, deliberate, cutting through the noise like a plow through dry earth. That this land has been in my family since freedom was first given to us, he said. Passed down, not through paper promises, but through sweat, blood, and prayer. And I didn't come here to tell you a story. He tapped the folder gently with one calloused finger. I came here to show you the truth. For the first time, the laughter dimmed. The room shifted, uneasy under the weight of his calm certainty. The courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs after Elijah's words, but the judge only chuckled, shaking his head as though amused by a child's stubbornness. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench. Mr. Turner, the judge said, his voice condescending, it's touching, truly, that you cling to family lore. But courts deal in hard evidence, not bedtime stories. If every man who claimed his grandfather worked a field owned it, why, half this county would be his. The gallery laughed again, louder this time. Some even slapped their knees. The mockery rang in Elijah's ears, but he didn't bow his head. He sat straighter, his jaw set like stone. The opposing lawyer seized the moment, pacing a few steps in front of the bench. Your Honor, this is exactly what I meant. Romantic notions, tales of heritage. It's all smoke. There's no deed, no record. Just a dream wrapped in wishful thinking. He turned to Elijah with a smirk. Tell me, Mr. Turner, do you really expect this court to believe that land, prime land, has sat under your family's name for generations without so much as a scrap of proof? Elijah's deep, weathered voice cut through the jeers. Yes, because truth doesn't vanish just because you laugh at it. The courtroom quieted for a heartbeat, startled by the weight in his tone. Elijah's eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on the young men smirking in the back, then on the judge himself. This land isn't just dirt, Elijah continued. It's the bones of my father, my mother, and theirs before them. Every row plowed, every seed planted, every harvest pulled from that earth carries their names. I'm not here with fairy tales, sir. I'm here with what they left me to protect. The lawyer waved a hand dismissively, forcing a laugh. Poetic speeches won't change facts. If Mr. Turner had any real claim, surely he would have produced something by now. Isn't that right, Your Honor? The judge smirked, nodding. Quite right. Stories don't win cases. Elijah lowered his gaze to the leather folder resting in front of him. His fingers brushed over its surface, steady, deliberate. Then he looked back up, his eyes calm but burning with quiet fire. I didn't come here to beg you to believe me, he said firmly. I came here to show you what cannot be denied. The room stirred again, tension replacing laughter. For the first time, the possibility that Elijah might not be empty-handed lingered in the air. The judge leaned forward, tapping his gavel lightly against the bench. Not to call for order, but to punctuate his smirk. His voice dripped with condescension. Well then, Mr. Turner, he said, his eyes narrowing. If you've got more than stories, let's see it. Do you have anything to back up these claims? Or are we wasting the court's time with family folklore? The gallery chuckled, emboldened by the judge's tone. One man in the back muttered, Here it comes. Nothing. Elijah didn't rise to the bait. He simply placed his broad, weathered hand atop the leather folder that sat on the table before him. His fingers traced the worn edges, as if drawing strength from its history. He looked up at the bench, his gaze steady. I do, he said quietly. The room stilled. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried, firm enough to hush even the whispers. The opposing lawyer, Holloway, barked a laugh. Oh, this should be rich. What do you have in there, Mr. Turner? A family Bible with names scribbled in the margins? Some handwritten note passed down around the kitchen table? He turned toward the gallery, grinning. Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves for the grand reveal of Turner's fairy tale. The judge chuckled along with him. Yes, Mr. Turner. Surely you don't expect us to believe you've uncovered some miraculous proof after all these years? Elijah remained silent, his hand still resting firmly on the folder. He did not rush. He did not rise. Instead, he let the moment stretch, the weight of his calm unsettling in its patience. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but ringing with conviction. What I carry here is older than any of you in this room. It's older than the courthouse we're standing in, and it bears the names of men who thought this land would never belong to a family like mine. But it does. A hush fell across the courtroom. The lawyer's grin faltered just slightly. The judge cleared his throat, suddenly less certain. Then present it, if you have it. Elijah's hand pressed down once more on the folder, his eyes never leaving the bench. In time, he said calmly. When the moment comes, you will see. Gasps rippled through the room at his defiance. Some laughed nervously, but others shifted uneasily in their seats, sensing a storm behind his composure. And for the first time, doubt began to creep into the air. Doubt that the farmer's words might not be empty after all. Mr. Holloway, sensing the room's unease, wasted no time seizing back the stage. With a self-satisfied smile, he strutted to his table and plucked up a neat stack of papers bound with a silver clip. "Your Honor," he declared, holding them aloft for all to see. "While my opponent clings to family lore and cryptic promises, I come armed with real documents, records, proof." He stepped toward the bench, his voice rising in mock triumph. "Here we have clear evidence that the Turner land was sold off decades ago. Taxes unpaid, debts outstanding. The paperwork speaks for itself. The idea that his family still holds any rightful claim is pure fantasy." He spread the papers across the judge's desk with a theatrical flourish. Signatures, seals, county records, all confirming what everyone in this room already knows. This land doesn't belong to Mr. Turner. It never did. The gallery chuckled and nodded in approval, feeding off his confidence. One man muttered, "Knew he didn't have a chance," and another whispered, "He should have given up before embarrassing himself." The judge picked up one sheet, scanning it with a thin smile. "Well, Mr. Halloway, this does seem quite thorough." He cast a glance down at Elijah. "You see, Mr. Turner, this is what evidence looks like. Neatly prepared, verifiable, official, not a tattered folder with secrets you refuse to share." The courtroom erupted in soft laughter once again, the sound rolling through the wooden chamber like a tide of dismissal. Through it all, Elijah sat silent. His weathered hands rested calmly on the leather folder before him. His eyes did not waver as he watched Halloway bask in his performance. Finally, Elijah spoke, his tone steady, a counterweight to the lawyer's bluster. "Paper can be forged. Records can be altered. But truth survives." The words cut through the laughter, leaving a brief, uneasy silence in their wake. Halloway smirked, waving dismissively. "Fine words, but words don't win land, Mr. Turner. Deeds do." Elijah's hand slid slowly across the cover of his folder. His gaze sharpened, his voice low and deliberate. "Exactly." The murmurs began again, but this time they carried something new: anticipation. The courtroom air seemed to thicken as Elijah rose slowly from his chair. The wooden legs scraped softly against the floor, the sound sharp in the sudden silence. Every eye followed him as he placed his hand firmly on the leather folder that had sat unopened all morning. "You've all had your laugh," Elijah said, his voice low but carrying to the farthest corner of the room. "But I did not come here with stories alone." He unbuckled the worn strap and opened the folder with deliberate care. Inside lay a single document, its edges yellowed with age, its paper thick and rough beneath his calloused fingers. He lifted it reverently, as though holding a piece of living history, and set it on the table where the judge could see. The opposing lawyer's smirk faltered. His eyes darted to the document, then back to Elijah, doubt flashing for the first time. "This," Elijah said, his tone steady as stone, "is the original deed to the Turner farm. Signed in 1872, with the county seal and the signatures of those who swore this land would belong to my family. It has passed through the hands of my father and his father, and now mine. Intact. Untouched. Truth preserved." Gasps filled the room. People leaned forward, straining to see the faded ink, the embossed seal that still gleamed faintly in the light. The judge reached for the document, his face draining of color as his eyes scanned the page. The seal was real. The signatures were real. The dates aligned with records older than the courthouse itself. Elijah's deep voice broke the silence. "For years, you mocked us. Said we didn't belong. Said our work, our sweat, our blood meant nothing without your papers. Well," he tapped the deed with a calloused finger, "here are your papers, older and truer than anything you've ever brought before this court." The gallery erupted in shocked whispers. Some covered their mouths. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The laughter that had filled the room earlier was gone, replaced by awe. The judge's hand trembled slightly as he set the deed down. The smug smile that had played on his lips since the hearing began had vanished entirely. The truth had landed, undeniable and unshakable. The judge's spectacles slid slightly down his nose as he stared at the parchment before him. His lips parted, but no words came. The courtroom, once buzzing with laughter and scorn, had gone utterly silent, the kind of silence that pressed heavy on the chest, demanding reverence. At last, the judge cleared his throat. His voice, stripped of its earlier smugness, trembled with forced authority. "This court recognizes the validity of this document," he said, his eyes flicking briefly toward Elijah. "The deed is authentic. It proves that the Turner family are the rightful owners of the land in question." A ripple of gasps and murmurs surged through the gallery. The same townsfolk who had laughed now sat stunned, their faces flushed with embarrassment. The young men in the back, who had joked about Elijah's ability to read, shifted uncomfortably, avoiding his gaze. Elijah remained standing, his posture tall, his expression calm. He did not smile or gloat. His dignity needed no flourish. "The court therefore rules in favor of Mr. Elijah Turner," the judge continued, his gavel striking the bench with a hollow crack. "Ownership of the land shall remain with the Turner family, as established by this original deed." The sound echoed like thunder across the aisle, Mr. Halloway's smug confidence shattered. His face paled as he stumbled for words, but none came. His carefully crafted papers lay forgotten, flimsy shadows against the weight of truth. Elijah gathered the deed carefully, slipping it back into the leather folder. He placed his hat on his head and turned toward the doors. As he walked, the crowd parted instinctively, no longer with disdain, but with awe. No one laughed now. Outside, the sun shone warm on his face as he stepped down the courthouse steps. The folder rested against his chest, as it had when he entered, but now it carried not just his family's past, but their future secured. For generations, they had been doubted, dismissed, mocked. But today, in that courtroom, the truth had stood taller than prejudice, and Elijah Turner left not just as a farmer, but as the rightful heir of his family's legacy.